done this, you know? I feel like I'm out of practice.
It's a year ago.
The big button is a year ago, last year, in
It was
fact.
last year.
That's right. All right, Mr. Mayor, 6:30. The Google machine says that we're live, and it looks like our microphones and camera are working. Welcome to 2025.
I guess I can't gavel anybody. I got everything but that. Just not. What do I do again? Oh.
Speaking of last
I
year.
will call to order the Riverside City Council meeting for Thursday, January 9, 2025 at 6:30 PM. It's my knuckles, it's my gavels back there. So we will ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Mr. Brown?
Present.
Mr. Denning?
Here.
Ms. Fry?
Here.
Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Ms. Lomach?
Yes.
Mr. Maxfield?
Present.
Mayor Williams?
Here. No absent members. Mr. Manager, any additions or corrections to the agenda?
No, Mr. Mayor. That's it, Second.
We have a motion for Mr. Joseph and a second for Mr. Brown. All those in favor of approving the agenda as presented signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. All right, moving on. If you're able, please join us to pledge allegiance and rise. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And as is our custom, the first meeting of the year, we have a moment of silence and remembrance for two residents of our community who have made the ultimate sacrifice for our nation. First, we will remember Marine Corps Corporal Derek C. Dixon. He was 20 years old when he was killed while conducting combat operations in Iraq on June 26, 2007. A resident of Riverside, Derek joined the United States Marine Corps on July 9, 2004. He was trained as an information specialist. He'd been serving in Iraq since March 25th of 2007 and was assigned to the 2nd Salient Amphibian Battalion, 2nd Marine Division, Marine Expeditionary Forces, based out of Camp Lejeune in North Carolina. Corporal Dixon graduated from the Mount Academy in 2005, June of that year, following his transfer from Stebbins High School in February 2004. While living in Riverside, Derek was interested in law enforcement and was active in the Explorers Post 763 as a teenager. He made it a point to stay in touch with his advisor, Officer Jay Whiteman of the Riverside Police Department. Derek is buried in the Forest Hill Memorial Gardens and was given full military honors as a war hero, receiving the Purple Heart and other combat decorations as a result of his ultimate sacrifice for his country. Please join me at this time for a moment of silence for Corporal Derek Dixon. Thank you. We will also honor Army Private First Class Laverne Ulmer. Laverne joined the United States Army from Ohio and was a member of Company B, 1st Battalion, 9th Infantry Regiment, 2nd Infantry Division. On November 3, 1950, his unit engaged Chinese Communist forces during a withdrawal from Kunu-Rai, North Korea, to Sucheon, North Korea. Private First Class Ulmer was captured during the battle and was taken to a prisoner of war camp in North Korea. In 2005, a joint U.S.-North Korean investigative team recovered remains near a site where the Puchkin Taragol POW camp had been located and were located, and where two returning POWs reported Private First Class Ulmer had died. Advances in forensics techniques eventually allowed Private First Class Ulmer to be identified from those remains. He was returned to American soil 65 years after his death. Laverne was buried on Veterans Day, November 11th, 2016, and was given full military honors at Willowview Cemetery between his parents, John and Helen Ulmer. Private First Class Ulmer is memorialized on the Courts of the Missing at the National Memorial Cemetery of the Pacific. His name is also inscribed on the Korean War Veterans Memorial Wall in Washington, D.C., which was updated in 2022 to include the names of the fallen. I'll now ask for a moment of silence for Private First Class Ulmer. Thank you. It is a real privilege to be able to do that annually, and I'll also thank the clerk for making sure we had the updated versions of both biographies. We will move on to minutes from our meeting, which was last year. Anybody can remember those? Good for you. We last met December 19th, 2024. If there's a motion to approve those minutes as published?
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion for Mr. Maxfield and a second for Mr. Denning. All those in favor of accepting the minutes as published signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. If there's any citizens joining us this evening in chambers who wish to comment on any agenda or non-agenda items, you can fill out a form in the back of this room and turn it in to our clerk up here on the dais. We will move on our agenda. This being our organizational meeting of the year, there are a few things that we do one time a year, and this is then. So the first order of business is establishing the date and time of our meetings for 2025. We have discussed this a little bit as a group at a few previous meetings, but I would open the floor. And if the city manager wants to join, wants to throw anything in there, I
Yeah.
should kick it to you.
I'll just give you a little bit. I've got and also it was emailed, and it's also at your spots at the dais here, and I'll put it up just so the public can see it. Based on the prior discussions last year about potentially moving to a Monday meeting cadence with 2 meetings a month and combining regular meetings and work sessions into one single business meeting. This is the proposed calendar that would look like should you choose to move forward and adopt that approach and that cadence. Really, a couple things to note in this proposed calendar. The first is that really the only times of the year when we're going to be impacted by holidays are this month and next, and then in September, which I believe is Labor Day. So the MLK holiday, of course, the 17th of February, and then the 1st of September. Our recommendation would be just to push those meetings to the next Tuesday. This calendar also contemplates just one meeting in July. That would be on the 7th if you move to this calendar. That is about equidistant, or about the midpoint between the June meeting and the next August meeting. It's sort of in keeping with tradition of historically council's approach of meeting only once in July. Again, it's just, we were trying to sort of fit past practice into what this may look like. And then the only other topic of discussion is I do plan on taking leave at a couple of points. Really, first week of September is a week that I may be out. If you do still want to have a meeting the week of Labor Day, I'm happy to have a staff member sort of pinch hit for me that week. We could also kind of play it by ear, potentially cancel or move that meeting closer to the meeting date if necessary. But those are really the assumptions that we made in pulling this calendar together, and wanted to put forward to you for consideration here this evening. So,
Motion to approve.
Discussion.
Well, we can.
Is there any, like the MBRPC dinner, when's that?
It's on-
It's Thursday
it's on a
night.
Thursday night? And no other, like MDMA, MBA, anything else that we know of?
Those are on Tuesdays typically.
Okay. So-
Yeah.
However, we do need to consider that our own boards meet on Monday night.
Wow.
And
Yeah, we
I-
don't meet every Monday, though.
That's absolutely true. However, I do feel like that looking at the calendar, Mondays are not a good day. I think it's very inconsiderate of us, of our employees and our volunteers who volunteer to do things in the city, to take the initiative to just change the meeting for no apparent reason.
So we've never changed the meeting before?
Nope.
Nope.
Never. Didn't you tell me it used to be
We
Monday
had,
nights?
we had work sessions on Mondays, and then we had the meetings. The meetings were still always on Thursdays.
But the work council
So
meetings on
what we
Mondays.
did change was to where we did the work sessions and the meetings together on Thursday. And I understand that, I think that Thursday, we should stay with Thursdays. If we need to move the time back a half hour or an hour to accommodate
Other schedules?
other schedules, I think I would be more attuned with that than changing the day, mostly
used to meet
because
at 7
folks are
o'clock.
used to us being on My schedule is set so that it's Thursdays, and changing it to a Monday/Tuesday at times would mess with my other schedules the 100 other things that I do. So,
I would propose that we remain on Thursdays and maybe push time till 7. We used to meet at 7. Our
yeah, the
meetings-
meeting used to be at 7
And our
o'clock.
meetings used to go to 10 or 11 o'clock. Our meetings now are not that long. So we would still be free by 8:30 at the latest, probably. But I think for the employees and our volunteers and on our own personal schedules, I think to move it to another night is very inconsiderate.
Any other discussion items?
Just to have full consideration, I agree that there are impacts to the staff moving it to Mondays. There would also be impacts to staff pushing back the meeting another hour. So that
True.
should be considered.
Yeah. Like many things in life, perfect's not on the menu. So that's why we vote.
So what's the alternative here? I mean, we're going to move into a motion here.
Well,
Yeah.
Jesse made a motion for what was,
Yeah.
There was
already a
motion on
that was presented. I'll second his motion, and then if there,
We'll have a roll call vote.
yeah, it's fine. If there's no further, and I'll allow any,
One thing
Other
that's
points?
important for my consideration is what are the conflicts that are on the table? I mean, the proposal was to deal with conflicts that people had. And my desire is to make sure that everyone on this council can be here as often as possible.
So last year, just from the top of my head, we identified that the MVRPC dinner, the graduation ceremonies for our high schools, and the Just Stebbins Homecoming Parade were 3 that I know we pushed on. And that's without really looking back. So again, that's potentially 3 times, and that was without if we can't meet Thursday, we'll just then instead meet this day. That was we'll just push it all, the calendar just moves back a week or 2 weeks.
We also, MVAA, I mean, that was.
MVAA,
I feel like there was a ton of things that we've had to dance around the last 3 years that I've been on this board.
It seems like Thursday's been kind of that
Yeah.
that day lately. That's why it was kind of proposed to kind of move the meeting date, because Thursday's kind of been that date where events typically fall on, unfortunately.
yeah, and again, I'm not saying that there's a perfect solution and that there'd be no issues at all with moving to another day, but I know talking to colleagues in Beaver Creek that meet on Mondays, and then they meet that Tuesday, if there's a holiday on Monday, business is not interrupted. There's not a stop and flow. Whereas maybe if there's a Thursday and we can't get quorum, or there's a number of people that want to attend an event in the community, because the things that I mentioned were community events. It wasn't, hey, I want to go to the Thursday night football game in Cincinnati. Our practice had been in the past that we push everything back at a minimum 7 days and usually 14 days.
Right.
So I think this does present the ability to keep business moving. And is it a struggle for staff? I mean, the staff that attends council meetings now already attend council meetings in the evening. It changes the night of the week. And the planning commission traditionally meets on Mondays, and there's going to be some months where they'll have 3 options of a Monday to meet on, and every other month 2. So I don't know that we're depriving one of our volunteer boards of a night that they were accustomed to meeting.
I think too, sometimes there's legislation that needs to be passed in the time of matter. We've got earlier this week, that's just an example of one, and if a Monday meeting, that gives us, if we, for whatever reason, we're unable to meet, we're accustomed to meeting at the beginning of the week, we have 4 extra days. instead of, like, if something comes up late in the week, we usually meet on Thursdays, and then we're at the end of the week already.
Yeah.
Our normal
And then the weekend usually cuts out a lot of time we could,
Yeah.
if there was emergency legislation that we had to publish for the meeting and get together. That's a good point.
Sounds like there's some people on the board with like some like, schedule constraints, but the general consensus, what I'm hearing is that Monday works the best for a majority. And it also keeps us here more consistently.
Well, the one thing that I would, this discussion on Mondays worried me was that it would create a particular, where I had commitments and I was going to have to choose between those commitments. I don't want to put anybody in that position. So, I mean, I guess I just want to, before, Mike, if, you said that you had other commitments. If we do proceed with Monday, is that something that you're not going to be able to attend the meetings if we proceed with that?
I have made a commitment to this position.
Mhm.
Regardless of my other commitments, this is my highest commitment, other than work. So I will make it work regardless, even though for the last 15 years it's been fine. I'll make it work. But, I mean, what my preference, I mean, we all prefer to keep things the same.
Sure,
So,
yeah.
but I'll make it work. If
Well-
that's the final decision.
Okay. Well, if there's no further discussion amongst council, then we'll ask the clerk we'll call the question and ask the clerk to call the roll.
Mr. Maxfield?
Yes.
Mayor Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Denning?
No.
Ms. Fry?
Yes.
Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Ms. Lomach?
No,
And then, thank you, folks. The next item on our agenda is the election of deputy mayor.
I'd move to nominate Brenda Fry for deputy mayor.
I second that.
Okay? Madam Clerk, I will lean on you again. Do we call for nominations?
We do call for nominations.
Okay.
And then we could ask if there are any further nominations.
And we require acceptance speeches, right?
Well, at least 12,
And I'm
at least 12
sorry,
minutes,
I-
at least 12 minutes.
12 minutes. I thought 12 minutes was like your preamble, but,
Yes.
okay. So we have a nomination.
And then we just ask if there are any further nominations from the floor.
Are there any
move to
further?
accept the nomination and
Second.
Okay.
Okay. And then,
Well, Jesse seconded.
yeah, so we have a motion and a second. And if there's no further nominations,
Yes.
I'll call
So-
the question
Yeah, so the nomination was done by
by Zach.
Zach.
Seconded by Jesse.
Jesse, so that's the nomination. The motion to go ahead with selecting her was by Ms. Lomach, and who was the second?
Mr. Joseph.
Okay. And that's, yeah.
All
Do you want
right.
a roll call, or do you want voice vote?
We can roll call.
Okay. Ms. Lomach?
yes.
Mr. Joseph?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Denning?
Yes.
Ms. Fry?
Yes.
Mr. Maxfield?
Yes.
Mayor Williams?
Yes. Congratulations, Deputy Mayor Fry.
I'm so glad you voted for yourself.
All right. And then we move right into public comment on agenda items. And I'll ask the clerk if there's been any slips, especially this late-breaking news. New deputy mayor.
No slips have been turned in.
No slips have been turned in, but it's still early. It's only a few minutes in.
One vote, too.
I'm sorry.
One vote to nominate our person this year.
Yeah, there wasn't.
There wasn't, did it take several
Yeah.
hours or multiple days?
That's true. We didn't have any filibustering either, but if I would have had a cup of tea, warm my vocals a little bit. All right. Well, then, we can move into the resolutions for this evening, of which we do have 6, and I will lean on the city manager for the first resolution. This is, and I believe some of this will be annual housekeeping, or am I jumping ahead?
Some of it is, yes. But then basically to start, the first resolution is Resolution 25-R-3001. And I'll note again that it's auspicious, I think, that we're starting on the first resolution being 3001. But this is the resolution that would revise the public records policy, which was recommended to council after last year's Public Records Committee meeting. It's just updates to our records retention practices, and the full policy was provided in your packet. We're happy to answer any questions you have, but we recommend that you adopt this resolution.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion from Mr. Denning and a second from Mr. Maxfield. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of Resolution 25-R-3001 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. And the next resolution,
That's an interesting word, promulgated. I've never seen that.
promulgated?
Promulgated.
Yeah, it's like,
To
proclaimed.
promote or widely
decreed.
make known.
Yeah.
Widely make known.
The more you know.
You don't keep a low profile. It's is it soft launch, as you kids say?
Promulgated.
We're soft launching that? On to the next resolution.
We'll actually take resolutions 3002 and 3003. I'll ask Ms. Moore to provide just a brief introduction to both of those. It's also a little bit of housekeeping, but Ms. Moore, take it away.
Okay, good evening. Thank you guys for having me tonight. So
Thank you for making time. You've been busy.
It has been
Yes,
busy.
she has.
So, but all good. So our first resolution is authorizing city manager to enter into an agreement with O.R. Cole and Associates. And then the second one is for Cahill and Associates. These are both right-of-way acquisition services contracts required by ODOT. This is for our Harshman and Beatrice Signal Improvement Project, which is PID 118164. So these right-of-way acquisition services involve 5 parcels with 2 permanent right-of-way takes and 3 temporary construction easements. O.R. Colon will be receiving the primary contract, and then we have 1 appraisal review of parcel 5 value finding, where we have to have a second firm look over that, and that's where Cahill comes in. This project would be scheduled to go to construction in 2026. Estimated construction costs currently $680,000. So this is ODOT housekeeping, keeping us on track and on schedule for construction next year. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I'll move to approve 3002 and 3003.
Let's do them individually.
Okay. So we have a motion to approve 3002. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. We have a motion from Mr. Joseph and a second from Mr. Denning. All those in favor of approving Resolution 25-R-3002 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. And then Mr. Joseph also motioned to approve Resolution 3003. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion from Mr. Joseph and a second from Mr. Maxfield. Is there any further discussion?
I have one question. Is
Yes.
this Beatrice Harshman?
Beatrice Harshman signal improvement,
Streetlight and,
traffic signal,
okay.
a little bit of sidewalk.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I knew which.
Because
I
there
thought that
is,
was the
there's
project.
no signal there
There's no signal
currently,
there now,
right? So
Right.
the intention would be this would be the basically the right-of-way and associated construction easements we would need to actually build and put a
Right, no,
signal.
yeah, but that doesn't start until 2026. This is the
Correct.
right-of-way work.
In
Yep,
preparation.
that we need to be
This
able
is
to
the
do it.
homework to get ready to do that.
Yep.
Okay.
That was recommended by ODOT?
And we have Highway Safety Improvement Project grant money to do it. So we're installing a standard mast arm signal there.
Okay.
Okay.
Something that's been needed for
Actually,
probably at least 10 years.
Great idea.
Or longer.
All right. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor of Resolution 25-R-3003 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. And 3004, Mr. Manager.
3004, I will preface this just by saying this is a housekeeping resolution that in a typical year, the council would appoint representatives to First Suburbs. You may recall when we were discussing budget last year, there was some conversation about whether or not council was interested in continuing to be members of First Suburbs in the first place. The budget you adopted has the money. So if you want to appoint people and continue the membership, we can pay for it, and it'll be up to you to decide who you want to appoint. If you'd rather not continue that membership, then one of the easiest ways to, I guess, dispense with this resolution is just to not have anybody move to bring it forward, in which case it'll fail for lack of a motion. If somebody does want to move it forward, but there's no second, it would fail for lack of a second. If somebody moves and there's a second, then you would go to a vote, and I would suggest a roll call in that environment, just to be sure we get an accurate count, but I'll turn it over.
I'd like to get Brenda's opinion,
Yeah.
since
Yeah.
she's spent the most time with this group.
Yeah, so I do think the group has value for, it provides value for people who are new on council to learn about topics, to grow in their council duties. I personally have gained everything that I can gain from the association with First Suburbs. I've tried to move the organization in a growth trajectory. That does not seem to be the will of the organization. It's comfortable being exactly that. They meet once a month, they have a dinner, they have a speaker. In speaking with fellow council members, I want to give you time, Sarah, to speak. You had mentioned that, just having someone on that body does help us with being out in the regional community. The bylaws changed so that rather than requiring 2 voting members to be able to meet quorum, we can still have 2 voting members, but even if we only have 1,
You can vote.
having 1 from every community would still be enough to have quorum for the organization. So we would not be, to their detriment if we continue to be part of the organization, but we don't have 2 people to go. That was one of the big concerns that I had, is that if we didn't have 2 members of this body that were interested, then it would not serve the organization well for us to continue to be part of it. I think as long as there's someone on this body that's willing to, rub elbows in that organization, I don't think it hurts us. I just want to make sure that we're not asking someone to go who's not getting any benefit from it.
Well, I attended the last meeting, and it was down in Washington Township, and presentation was very informative, and they do have ups and downs. I won't
Mhm.
disagree with that.
Yeah.
I've been around the tube a long time, and I was very, very interested in the program that was presented. Now, that doesn't happen every time, because sometimes I've gone as a second to her this year. It's things that's repetitive in my brain. However, I don't believe we can afford to not be represented. I do think that it's somebody at the table. I agree, it would be nice if someone else would do it. But I don't want to see us go away. And I was part of the organization that created First Tiers with the first mayor. And it's been a long time. One of the issues I feel like that's going on, and I'd rather not say too much publicly, is there will be, obviously, in a very short period of time for medical reasons, probably a change in the leadership.
Yep.
Is that a fair way to say it?
That is a fair way to say it. Mhm.
And then I think we need to stay a part of it to see how that evolves.
Yeah.
And if it evolves to something better, that's wonderful. If it evolves to something that needs to go away, that's okay too.
Yeah.
But I think we need to be at the table.
Well,
And it's not that expensive.
Can I ask, in the years that we've been a part of this, what has been what is the goal of this organization? What have they done for the city to help us move forward?
It represents only the cities that touch Dayton. Dayton is not part of it. So it has been a voice to legislature to protect suburbs that are not part of the major city. There are groups all over the state.
Mhm.
Every big major city has a suburb group. And it's there to protect against
Yeah,
Well, so, but that part of the,
annexation,
that's,
yeah.
that was
you know,
part of the original goal
yes,
when it
right.
was chartered. But that's not where the work has been in recent years. In recent years, it has largely been a gathering, having
And
a
it-
speaker and then the interacting
Less
amongst the.
advocacy, you'd
But I
say?
think,
Yes.
but I
Okay.
believe
Yes.
What did you
that's
say, Mayor?
because.
I said less advocacy is what I picked up from Brenda.
That's a good way to put it. However, I don't think it ever hurts to know what's going on around us.
Sure.
And that happens there with regularity.
I mean, there are some cases in which, like, for example, when aggregation was a topic in the region, it was a place for them to come and speak to, many communities at once. That's information that we can bring back to, it's a representative. They can bring the information back. We can invite the speaker here if, they
And
want to.
we've hosted a few times.
We've hosted a few
We
times,
hosted
yeah.
Richard Stock one of the times, which is always good to hear.
Yeah,
What-
and our city manager's been a speaker at first.
I think it's done what it was intended to do with the original charter part, because now you don't have miscellaneous legislation that only impacts the large cities, and they don't get to push the smaller suburbs around as much because of not only this organization, but the organization that is first ring for Columbus, Cleveland, Toledo, and Cincinnati. Those suburb groups, those first suburb groups are there.
They are
And
proactive.
they've done their job, but we need to keep them in place so that it doesn't, the pendulum doesn't swing the other way and things start going the other direction. So to be part of that, I think, just to keep that organization there, so you don't have to rebuild the wheel later, I think is important.
Are there attendance requirements for municipalities? I know you guys talked about voting rights or voting privileges.
Right, so there is no penalty for not having attendance. The big issue over the past 2 years has been, we can't actually move business because we don't have quorum.
I see.
And that's
So-
we've changed
And
bylaws.
we changed the bylaws very recently, so heading into the new year, the quorum requirement won't be as strict.
Is there any overlap with this, group and mayors and managers, by any chance?
I mean, overlap in the sense that, yes, a lot of jurisdictions are participants in both, and my sense is that First Suburbs has more involvement from council members. Mayors and managers is more mayors and city managers. But what I would say the distinction is, and a good example is like last night was the first mayors and managers meeting of 2025. I went, it was up in Yellow Springs hosted, so we go up there. The way those meetings are structured, usually there's a dinner, but usually there is structure. And at every meeting, there's typically a legislative report out where, I think right now it's Patrick Titterington, who's the manager up in Troy, sits on the OML board. He provides, on occasion, a lengthy rundown of all of the legislation that's pending at the State House, and usually there's discussion about, so for example, the AT&T issue that we'll talk about later today was discussed, and there's discussion about collective action. And typically the hosting community will provide a speaker, but it's usually an update on, here's a cool thing that we're doing in our town, sort of an update like that. We hosted mayors and managers about a year ago, I wanted to say. We had WBI, Wright Brothers Institute, just kind of give an update on the work they do adjacent to the base and how that intersects with the region. But the distinction that I see, because I've sat in on some First Suburbs meetings and having gone to mayors and managers, is that the mayors and managers meetings, in my experience, tend to have a more focused and structured agenda about collective action at a state level or advocacy that I don't know is always present at First Suburbs.
So it sounds like to me, that sounds very effective, very much, we're moving a pendulum in that regard. It's the same overall constituencies, as if you, in terms of our residents being served by us being advocated for as a collective group of first-tier suburbs. So, I mean, in the times that I've went, as a newer member of council, like, I didn't see the value. I remember the last one I went to was a presentation by the Dayton Chamber of Commerce. It was like, here's all the businesses that are opening in Dayton. I'm like, great. I know 2 more restaurants where I want to go check out in Dayton. Cool. That
In
was
the city of Dayton, not the region.
In the city of Dayton,
Yeah,
right.
not the region.
And all their cool condos that they were building. That doesn't help Riverside residents or me out in the least. So I've always kind of, the times that I've attended, I'm like, what's the point? Like, cool that you're doing that in your city, but like, hey, Kettering, you're, like, we're from Kettering, like, oh yeah, we're flush with cash. I'm like, okay, cool, give me some. Like, what am I doing here? So that's my personal take on it. I feel like we are represented by our city manager and mayor in a good capacity to our local partners. Josh, especially, you've done a ton of work with the partners in the area. So I'm just, I think I've expressed my opinion.
Do we have 2 people that want to volunteer?
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
what it's really going to come down
I
to.
think that's what it comes down to. I think that we need to stay a part of it just because we need a face at the table. But the bottom line is we need to find 1 or 2 people that are willing to, what night is their meeting?
Wednesday.
When,
Wednesday at 5 o'clock.
which Wednesday?
It's the 4th, I think.
On
The fourth?
schedule they have on their website, they have for 2024 and 2025, and it's the 4th Wednesday
Yeah.
of the month, with the exception of, what did it say? Let's see.
This is January.
And it's
July, August, and December. They don't have.
They don't
Yes,
meet.
there's a
Okay.
break for the
So-
summer. Yeah.
Mr. Brown, would you be interested in doing this?
I was thinking you would ask me, and yes, I would do that.
Well, there you go.
There you go, and I
You got-
certainly would be willing to be an alternate for him.
So there you go. There's our 2 names.
I don't think that,
So we have a
Um,
first and a second, and then an alternate.
Oh,
I only needed 2 now.
Well, those are the 2 regular members, but they
and then we need
do.
an alternate. So you want to be the second name?
whatever. I can even ride with Andy, he lives in my neighborhood.
That's fine, I'll pick you up.
The thing that I find sometime now, it does not hurt to know what's going on
Yeah.
around you. And I've picked up ideas there. So I don't think that it behooves us to withdraw at this point.
Yeah.
Down the road, it may not, like I said, I sense there's going to be a change in.
Yeah. Since we do have 2 regular, I'd be willing to be the
the
alternate.
There you go.
Yeah.
We got 3 people.
What did you say?
She'll be the
I'll be
alternate.
the alternate.
I'm sure you will.
So then before you go to a vote, just to clarify and make sure we're all on the same page. So the nominations, then the 2 regulars are Mr. Brown, Ms. Lomatch, with Ms. Fry as the alternate.
Yes.
That's what I'm hearing. Okay,
Correct.
Cool.
That's the motion that I just made.
All right, so we have a motion on the table. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a second from Ms. Lomatch. All those in favor of Resolution 25-R-3004 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Thank you, council members, for being willing to serve. And then on to 3005.
More service. So this is nominations for representatives to the Miami Valley Regional Planning Commission, MVRPC, of which Ms. Lomatch currently serves as chairperson of the board. So the nominations that we need are representatives to the board, of which I assume Ms. Lomatch would continue in that capacity at least. But we also need nominations for the Transportation Committee, as well as the Technical Advisory Committee. Technical Advisory Committee customarily has been staff. And so I will nominate Ms. Moore and Mr. Miller in our Public Service Department to serve in that capacity.
Which one was that one?
Technical Advisory Committee is the last committee to make a staff appointment to.
And that's the committee that makes the recommendations.
for like specific road projects.
And reviews
Mm-hmm.
projects.
And Transportation's been who in the past?
Yeah.
It is currently it's
It's
Ms.
been
Lomach
Kevin.
and
Yes, it's a
Mr. Williams, I believe, are the current, is that for the
Correct.
board and the transportation committee?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
but it's one primary and an alternate.
Yeah.
Alternate.
Right, you're the,
Alternate,
yeah, you're the
It's
alternate.
Mr. Williams, you are the alternate.
Okay.
Mayor Williams, you are the
That
alternate.
makes more sense.
Yes.
Yes.
I've missed a bunch of meetings then.
No, you
Like a
didn't.
whole lot.
You
Are
said,
are
Like
you
all
both
of them.
will- are you both willing to do that again this year?
I would certainly recommend Ms. Lomach being the lead, and if anybody else would like to be the alternate, I would certainly be happy to serve, continue to serve, but I would also not want to stand in the way of somebody who would like to learn, to be more involved.
It is a daytime meeting.
Yeah, it's usually Thursdays during the day.
Thursday at, well, the board meets at 8:30, the general board meets at 9.
So I have no issue serving as the alternate for Sarah, and certainly agree with, I agree with the TAC approval, or the TAC committee appointments of our staff.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a bunch of seconds. They couldn't get that out fast enough. And I talk fast, so imagine how fast that was. So we have a motion from Mr. Denning, a second from, pick between Jesse or Zach, just flip a coin.
I got it, yeah.
All those in favor of Resolution 25-R-3005 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. And our sixth and final resolution of the evening, Mr. Manager?
This would be staff appointments to the Tax Incentive Review Council, and I will.
The Turk.
The Turk, and I will nominate Ms. Holt and Ms. Minnick in that capacity.
Motion approved.
So
Second.
We have a motion from Mr. Joseph and a second from Mr. Maxfield. Is there any further discussion?
So you just start saying there's a bunch of firsts and a bunch of seconds, and then just let Katie decide.
I'll
Yeah.
get it, yes.
She'll sort it all out. All those in favor of Resolution 25-R-3006 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries.
Can I make a comment about MVRPC?
Absolutely.
I would encourage any one of you who feels so inclined to occasionally drop in and come to the meetings, because we will be looking for more representation, and you need to understand the role.
It's a tough committee for all of us have day jobs, which is it's a hard thing, I would say, I know, Brenda and I were talking about it, to, like, us two, I'd love to, by all means, but 8:30 on a Thursday is like prime working time. So it's a little bit rough. I don't know if the committee's ever thought about, like, adjusting from being a
I
morning
would say
meeting.
everybody there has a job.
So, I mean, I think you'd be, as the president, if you could propose that you could, just like we did today, kind of consider the cadence of your meetings being in the evening, I think. it
Well,
would
there's
open it up.
90 members on this board, and they come from 5 counties. And
You call it the agenda. Put it on.
Parliamentarian has a role.
Put it on there. Can we meet at 5?
Even 4.
Yeah, so, I mean.
meetings are over generally by 10:30, and we stay pretty much on task.
And they're in
So the
person?
answer is I'd have.
And they're in
it'd be a
person?
half a day a month.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
well,
it's very, very interesting if you are interested in that kind of, I'm kind of nerdy that way.
When I was the alternate, I did get to attend some of the meetings, and I mean, it was very useful information.
And I might add that all of you have the availability of the monthly reports. And I share the agendas with the city manager, so please don't feel like you can't. And it is very interesting to see how we rank against everybody else, because we do have to go in and fight. And I have to say that our guys and gals do a great job. And I have to give kudos to Kevin in the interim period that he served. He is very well respected among folks downtown, and I don't believe that he gets the kudos that he deserves. he stepped up before we got our new engineer and filled in, and I hear nothing but positive feedback for how professional he is. And I think we're very fortunate. Unfortunately, I think he's going to retire soon. But I do need to publicly say that because, and if you would take time to look, some of them are 50 and 60 pages long. But there's a lot of information in there. Thank you for your time.
Okay, well, we will move on to public comment for non-agenda items, and I will ask the clerk at this time if any slips have been turned in for public comment on non-agenda items
No slips have been turned in.
yet. Okay. Well, we endeavor on, and I will turn it over to the city manager for discussion items, of which I think we have a few.
A few, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just as, with the adoption of the new meeting cadence and then the associated new meeting format, really our intention going forward is to use this section of the meeting to tee up items that will come forward to you in future meetings. And basically this is, sort of think of it as maybe like an expanded city manager comments section. I'm going to bring you the legislation you'll be voting on at subsequent meetings, and any other little things that pop up, I'll try to address during this portion of the meeting as well. The first thing I want to do, though, it's I think exceptionally relevant, and maybe even given the forecast that's coming here tomorrow, is to give a little shout out to the public service crew. I really appreciate all the work that Ms. Moore and Mr. Miller and every single one of our crew members did over the course of the recent snow event. It is the largest snow event that we have had in several years. And I would say, and we were also operating, I don't know how many folks out in the public know this, we were operating a little bit short in terms of our staff power. And I think all things considered, our crews did an exceptional job in a really rapid time frame, and we were just as competitive as some of our larger, more affluent neighbors in terms of being able to address and deal with the snow. Ms. Moore's prepared a short little presentation and summary just to give you some insights into the recent effort, and so I will tee that up here.
And I will make one remark. I was in Indianapolis today, in the city of, and their main drags were done, and none of their side streets were plowed. And it was tricky.
I bet. So hello again. I thought this snow event was a good opportunity to kind of let you guys know how we really are in our department working on having plans and using the most of our resources, and our resources being our people, our equipment, and our budget for materials. So this is just kind of a good snapshot of where we stand. One of our plow trucks, what's great, we really do have nice equipment. It's new, it's functional. We had minimal breakdowns, nothing that took us off the road during this event, which is huge. And just to keep folks out there in the know, right, we have a bunch of strategies in our plan. And depending on the weather, depending on the temperature, depending on all kinds of environmental factors, we employ different strategies. That could be pre-treating with brine, it could be plowing. You know, when we first start to plow this event, open up the main drags, keep it going. Number 1, 35, right? It's huge, and that's our primary responsibility. And we have our list of main drags. Our only goal, keep those open, keep traffic moving. Then, once that's done, then we work on curbing out the main drags, curb to curb. Then we move into the residential neighborhoods. Single pass through, then we work on cleaning them up, getting them curb to curb. So it's a lengthy process. And then this time we did not, but we have the option of pre-wetting our salt, which helps it operate and melt at a lower temperature. We didn't have to do it this time, but we do have that available. And then, you know, our priorities, right? Hills, bridges, overpasses, main roads. We look for RTA routes, school bus routes. I think the biggest compliment to the team was the call from the school superintendent when they went back to school and said no school buses got stuck that morning. So kudos. That's our number one customer when we're saying, did we do a good job? The schools were happy. So go on to the next page.
On that note, being a Beaver Creek school bus driver, we had 3 get stuck.
Oh dear.
Yeah, when we started back. So yeah, that's good. That's saying something.
That, to me, that's the ultimate compliment. So our fleet is 5 large dump trucks, 5 pickup trucks with plows, and 3 of those pickup trucks have salt box inserts. So that's what we have. We have 10 guys. That picture on the right-hand side, I know some people think, oh, you just put the plow on and go. It's pretty complicated. So that's that center console with a display screen that you have to maneuver, where is my plow? How much salt do I have? At what rate am I putting it down? What's the elevation of my bed? It's not, you're not just cruising along on a joyride. You got a lot going on. You really have to focus. So these guys do a great job. I say it's the equivalent of like driving a large piece of equipment and playing a video game at the same time, because you got all these controls going on at once, so. they
And
do-
when your visibility is reduced because you may have snow falling
Right.
and in whiteout conditions,
Right.
right? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
We can go to the next one. If anyone hasn't seen it, this is the materials, right? We have our salt storage barn, 550 tons, our brine tank, and then the pre-wet tank. So those are the tools in the toolboxes. We burned through every pound of salt we had in the barn. That's all right. This, I've been working on doing, so what does it cost to respond to an event? So we had 341 man-hours involved in this response, to the tune of $12,000 plus, right? So we're looking at, depending on when the guys are out there, and they're out there 24/7, it could be straight time, could be overtime. The equipment, that's not a direct cost, but we track our equipment. We use the FEMA equipment rates, which is pretty standard. So even though that's not $50,000 of direct cost, you consider that that's the cost to own, operate, and maintain that heavy equipment. And then if you ever thought like, gee, why can't we contract this out? It's because that equipment is expensive, complex, and hard to operate. So that, when you look at that price tag, it's a lot, but that's the reality if you tried to hire someone else to do it. So we've been using FEMA equipment rates in our work order now. In the event there ever was declared a disaster emergency, we have all the documentation already electronically in our work order system. So kudos to the team that's worked hard on getting all that in the computer this year. And then we use 533 tons of salt. So you look at the cost of that event, $96,000. It just shows you the level of resources it takes to respond to winter weather, so. But the guys did a great job. We basically used 56 pounds of salt per lane mile, which is very thrifty. You start looking up statistics on that, our guys did a great job using the salt we had, making it go a long way, applying it at the right time versus the wrong time, so. Big thank you to Kevin and the guys. They did a great job. These guys worked through the night, and they didn't quit until it was done. So, great job, team.
And I should add too that I think it's also important to recognize that the work that our service crew and I know Ms. Moore was in for the duration of the event as well. All of that work enables our other departments to operate efficiently and effectively. I also want to give a big shout out to the police and fire departments because we did run medic calls. We ran several the day of. We ran more the day after. I don't know that we had as many accidents as Beaver Creek did.
Right.
But we did have a few, and of course, the police respond to that as well. And so, their ability to get to those incidents and assist people who are in trouble in a timely manner is directly because of the work that our public service crew is able to do. And so, once again, I was nothing but impressed with all of the staff and how they handled it. And so I just personally want to thank all of you and all the other departments as well for their response. And we'll cross our fingers for Friday. We'll continue to work this same plan and same approach. But I think, we obviously, based on how things went at the beginning of the week, I'm confident that we're in a good place to respond to future incidents as they occur.
Did we get a salt delivery?
Oh, we did. We had one on Monday, actually. So
That's what
we
I
are
was gonna ask,
restocked.
is
Yeah.
Burn
Oh,
through
yeah.
all of it.
Glad I
I'm
was
like,
the only one
okay,
thinking
we
that.
got another one coming. Wait.
How much do we have left in our
We are back up to 550 tons
Okay.
in the.
Don't we
yeah,
have
so
can we like pre-purchase a whole bunch?
We had some left over from last year.
Right.
So we had purchased new to get ourselves to full. And so we emptied all that, and now we're full again. Our salt vendor, Cargill, does an excellent job. And basically, within 48 hours of a call, we get deliveries. And they were even quicker this time, so it was
Well, we're
nice.
in a consortium, aren't we? So we get,
The consortium does the collective bidding
Right.
through SWAP 4G, so we get a very good price on
Right.
that. So, and Cargill was our awarded vendor this year.
Right.
And I won't belabor the point, but one of the, if you recall that picture of where our salt barn is, for lack of a better word, and then the 2 tanks that we have for other brine and chemical applications is, in the grand strategy and grand scheme of things, that is a facilities challenge, not unlike Wright Point, that directly impacts our ability to provide service. A lot of, I would say, and this is something we've kind of discussed on occasion, and it's difficult to quantify the impact of that in the past. But I think giving the groundwork that Ms. Moore is laying, one of the things that we are trying to poke at is really what is the cost of having to order salt in small quantities over and over and over again. Or like now, I think we're a little constrained on brine because we used a bunch of it. We don't have the space to make more or hold more. And so now, we've got more snow coming on Friday. Of course, we will be out ahead of it as much as we possibly can. But because we're operating in a very tight, confined area. So all that is to say, again, given that that's sort of another constraint, another headwind
you
that we
want more
operate with.
buildings. I know what's coming.
It's a conversation that eventually we will need to have. Just because, again, I don't.
That's
I
not
just,
a new conversation.
Oh, I'm sure, but for folks, especially folks out there that may be watching, that I think it's important for people to kind of remember that it's not like that our folks have the luxury of going back to a gleaming pole barn where all the trucks are covered and everything gets cleaned off at the end of the day. We work out of a cinder block shack at 1791 in the back and have to crawl over each other to put salt in the trucks. And that slows us down, right? So to the extent that as we move forward and we continue getting the budget under control and we continue this progress, that's a place where a facility constraint really does impact our ability to give good service to the public. So just food for thought, but I think we're knocking it out of the park given what we've got. so.
And one of the constraints is that we're mostly in a well protection area.
Correct.
Where we might have property available that we could do something on. We can't because it's in the well protection area, and therefore we can't put salt bins and brine tanks
Yep.
and fuel tanks in those kind of places.
Yep.
So I think that our guys are doing a phenomenal job, and you and Beth are doing great things, keeping everything running. So just keep us up to date, and we'll give you as many tools as we possibly can.
Yep, it's a process. We'll keep working it.
I'd be remiss to not compliment the data you presented, the FEMA piece rate, the man-hour rate. I've consulted for a number of years. Big cities don't have that type of data for the most part. Little cities barely ever have that type of data. That is a lot of work, it is a lot of maintenance, and you don't see it very often. But in not that long, because it just happened earlier this week,
Yeah.
you were able to crunch and get data and say that this event cost us almost $100,000. That's how you make smart financial decisions, smart decisions as a governing board, and it doesn't come easy, and it's not something you see often. So I applaud you and the staff for the effort that you put in to be able to provide us that information.
Thank you, Zach. My whole goal is focused on giving you data so you can make good decisions for us. So that is our goal. And we're going to have a huge push for data this year. And it's going to be hard for the guys. It's a learning curve, right? It's documenting everything we do and being accountable for equipment, labor, materials. But that's our goal, is to give you the data so we can make good decisions on how we spend our taxpayer money. So we're excited.
And that includes data about street quality. So we will have lots of fun conversations later this year.
Coming in March, as I
Correct.
understand.
Yeah.
is
Second,
our-
third quarter,
Yep, we will be,
we'll have some good stuff to talk about.
all kinds of good data.
Could our community public get that information out?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's something that we can plug into the newsletter as
Yeah.
well as online.
Well,
So
I just think putting it out there in the morning.
Yeah,
We got another storm coming, this is what the last one cost us. Can't hurt.
And does that 50,000, that FEMA number, that's basically, okay, you wore your truck down this amount, so if you're trying to put money back for the next one, that's the kind of
Yeah.
that's the kind of information that goes into that number.
Yeah,
Is that
and
true?
FEMA updates their equipment rate schedule every other year. So we'll look at the, whatever, Ford F-250 pickup truck with a plow, with a salt box insert, its established rate of $31.31 per hour. A dump truck, whatever, X dollars per hour.
And that's
A
based
loader,
on, you're going to need to replace it in 5 years or whatever the answer is.
that's what they, yeah, it has
Yeah,
their.
so it's like a depreciation.
Built-in depreciation.
Okay.
Yep, Mike, exactly.
That's good information to have.
I wouldn't say that from a finance perspective, you'd commonly see that depreciation is going to happen over a length of time. That number is, the number that FEMA gives out is typically used if you have if there's a hurricane, we're never going to get that. Like tornadoes and things like that, we would.
it's almost a reimbursement rate.
Yeah, it's a reimbursement rate.
Reimbursement.
It also gives you
Ira.
information on like how much,
Ira.
like if we had to bill it out to someone through an abatement process or something like that, that gives us the data to say like this is how much it costs the city to run this equipment. And it's shocking over the length of time, over the 10, 15 years you have that equipment, like how much it has earned the city versus how much we paid for it.
Right.
So.
So I will move quickly on to a few things that are coming down the pike next. So at the next meeting, which it will be January 21st, I've emailed council some updates that the county has related to the countywide hazard mitigation plan. That actually has some intersections with FEMA rates and everything else, basically in order to get reimbursed if a disaster happens, council has to adopt that plan. So we'll have a resolution in front of you the next meeting for that. We'll also have a discussion item to talk about adjustments to the council handbook now that we're through the organizational meeting. And I will have an agreement with the Transportation Improvement District in front of you. That is basically the next step for the Woodman Safe Streets for All process. So as you'll recall, we, by the end of this quarter, should have a final Safe Streets for All action plan that I will use to wrap up our grant with USDOT and the Federal Highway Administration. Congressman Turner's office last year gave us another $1.5 million to continue design on that project. And that is included in this year's budget, along with the local match that we have to pay for the congressional funds. The contract with the TID is basically to continue to manage this project for us. And their rates that they will charge are included in the amounts we've already appropriated. So we've got all our bases covered with the money. It just lets us continue to do the design and do that good work with the partners and the partnerships that we've already established to date. So I'll get that to you as well. The final thing for this evening is the AT&T Public Utilities filing that we briefly talked about. I've also sent you some information on that. The long and short of it is that AT&T has filed a tariff change request with the Public Utilities Commission of Ohio. In a nutshell, what they are asking is for any time a city needs their telecommunications equipment to move out of the right-of-way, that the city would be responsible for paying that relocation cost. Under the current arrangement, if there's a public safety concern, if it's a hazard, if something is going on, it's the utility, it's their line, it's the utility's responsibility to move that to mitigate the concern. If the requested tariff change goes through, all of those costs would come back on us. So there is some concern, I would say, among our friends and partners and other communities in the region that this is a fairly aggressive and quickly timed filing. And so that's why the Ohio Municipal League has requested that if local governments are interested in challenging this tariff rate adjustment, and I would recommend to you that you do, that if you basically adopt a motion to participate in the OML's efforts to challenge this tariff and ideally save us some costs in the future, we'll have to go through the whole process with OML and the PUCO. But we would need a voice or a motion to that effect this evening, and then we will work with OML to figure out what other legislative or other action items we may need from council at the next meeting.
What does the motion need to say?
So I would say that I would request for motion to participate in the OML's process opposing the proposed tariff changes that AT&T has requested.
So moved.
Second.
There was a proposed or a sample ordinance that was sent by OML.
Yep.
Now, would that be something that we submit to the clerk to adopt as a part of this motion?
No, what will happen is, we need assuming you all approve the motion that was just laid on the table, we will let OML know on a staff level that our council intends to participate. And what I would expect is that OML will ask me to bring that ordinance to you at our next meeting for adoption. And that way, we've got the official legislative action taken care of. Part of the reason, even last night, we talked about this at Mayors and Managers, that OML is okay with a voice vote for right now, is that if the tariff is not challenged by the 18th of this month, so in 9 days, it automatically becomes effective. A lot of other cities don't even meet between now and the 18th. And so, much less have two readings or want to pass an ordinance on an emergency basis, right? So OML said, go ahead and just get a voice vote down or a motion through if that's what council wants to do, and we'll handle the legislation next. So again, I would say that it's fair to say that AT&T, as a function of the timing of this request, has put a lot of communities in a difficult spot with respect to how to respond. But we're working with OML and our other peer cities to address that. So you have I believe there's a motion and a second.
We have a motion and a
Yes,
second.
I do
So
have that.
if there's no further questions or comments among members of council, then I would just say all in favor of the motion on the table signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. And there you go, Mr. Manager.
That's all I have. Just a friendly reminder that given the forecast and the upcoming snow, if your car is parked on the street, it's probably a good idea to move it, just to give our plows and our crew a little bit more space to work. If you're able to do that, we would appreciate it, and we will do our best to stay on top of things. But thank you, Mr. Mayor, and Happy New Year, everybody.
I have a comment about the modification of the, what's the word I'm thinking of? The council
The agenda,
no,
meetings,
Handbook?
handbook.
handbook.
That
Roger
when
that.
we change that, okay, because the section that says it's Thursdays and all, we just change it to something a little more flexible
Yeah,
in that we will meet twice a month.
Twice a month.
Or whatever the answer is, so that, and the date will be, the day of the week will be decided at the first meeting, blah, 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 so that we don't get ourselves painted into a corner again, because essentially, as of right now, we're breaking the rules of our own handbook, because we just changed the day, even though the handbook had, you see what I'm saying? So what I'm saying is, I'd like to see the handbook be a little more flexible.
oh, absolutely. No, and that's a great point, and I actually had a couple other suggestions along those lines in a couple other sections. So what I intend to do is bring you a draft of the handbook with, I think we did this last year too, where I kind of just showed some of the highlights as far as here are the sections that we might need to update and some proposed language. So I'll bring that as well.
Okay, thank you.
And right in line with what Mike just brought up, I really do hope that the format that Josh laid out for tonight's agenda, for example, that during discussion items, that if someone has something they'd like to bring forward for a future meeting, a future discussion, that would be a good time. We obviously have council member comments, but that would be a good time while we're in discussion about other things, if you want to bring up
Well,
something.
maybe we need
that's-
to make that as part of the agenda. Instead of council member comments, it's
Well, yeah, I mean, like, right
anything-
now, we have discussion
Anything else
items.
for the good of the order or whatever.
Right.
That somebody wants to bring up.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
I mean-
I think that's a good practice.
Yes. Yeah, I was just gonna
Josh, what
say,
do you think?
I don't want to, sorry to jump in. I don't want to preempt next week's conversation, but this is one of the things I was actually going to bring up next week, which is that, there's a section in the handbook that talks about agenda. And I think that could use a little bit of clarification, but to the mayor's point, council isn't confined to the items that are listed on the agenda, particularly when it comes to discussion items. So, and we will try to build a spot under discussion items for other things that may be of interest. So, Mayor, to your point, council has and always does have, as a function of your role, the ability to talk about other things, even if they're not on the agenda during that section of the meeting. And so that'll be one of the proposed changes that I bring to
Yeah.
you.
All right.
I would add an item for, like, hopefully soon discussion, city manager review. We did it in May last year. This year, we don't have to do the clerk's review, and that's a function now of the city manager. We do have a law director now that we are. That
Works
staff
for us.
Works for us. So I know the last time we didn't have a lot of discussion prior to delivering it, and there was some discussion around the format of it. So I'd say like February or March to just have an initial discussion about how we're going to do it, what the timeline is this year, because I think we delivered it in June. I would like, for Josh's sake, to keep it consistent, that he's going to get a review every June, and I feel like we don't have a set, final, agreed upon format of how we're going to do it. So I'd say like sometime within the first quarter, for like maybe March timeframe, to start that discussion about like how we want to do it.
Amongst the seven of us. All right.
I'll put a pin in on the calendar that we use to have executive sessions for
Yeah.
personnel,
It would be
in
executive.
February, March
It would be
timeframe.
executive.
I don't
Yeah.
think the format of how we do it, like.
Well, that can be
Scale.
a discussion item that we have amongst us in public, but there's also going to be a need for
Yeah.
executives. Especially if we lay out a timeline that we want to meet
Yeah.
and not feel like we're rushed at the very end to deliver it
Right. Yep.
by a date and feel like we didn't get there the right way. Okay, so I will move into council member comments and announcements, and I'll start with Ms. Lomach.
Okay, thank you all for the time, and I will continue to ask the council to consider the locking up personal arms, it might not be a gun, in the police department for safety of children. It doesn't seem to be a big deal. It's been spoken to me that we don't have room. I can't imagine how much room that would take. But I would like this council to consider moving for research in that direction.
Thank you. Mr. Brown?
I want to thank Councilmember Denning's nomination for me for the First Suburbs Consortium. Looking forward to learning more about that organization and helping me be the best council member I can be. So appreciate that. And also just a shout out to once again, for the Public Works crew and their service department for their hard work. What was the average hours per day they worked, each one of them?
Well, they're on 16-hour shifts.
16-hour shifts?
Yeah,
Wow.
during an event like that, yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for them, and yeah, they handled it very well, and appreciate them very much. So that's all I got. Thank you.
To echo that, it's, we're fortunate to have the staff that we do, the dedication that we do have with our staff, at all of our roads. We were able to get here, all seven of us, on time today, and I hope for their safety, all the staff as we have, so, coming in the next 24 hours. I'd also be remiss to say that there's, at the other end of the country, for the people who are impacted by the fires in California, definitely scary events. So if anybody has family, friends out there, definitely they're in my thoughts and prayers. I'd also just take like a moment to remember the passing of our 39th president, President Carter. was laid to, had his, today's the National Day of Mourning for him. So I definitely was a pioneer, and if you want an example of giving your entire life to service, look no further than that man of 100 years as a former president, still every Sunday teaching Sunday school at his church. So definitely someone I look up to, and just someone I'd teach my kids about, as this is a good example of a public servant. So that's all I have.
And I would go further. I would say not only an example of an exemplary life and service, but also was able to rise from, we would say, very humble beginnings. And I think, I would hope that the life of President Carter would inspire folks, regardless of how they might have grown up, or regardless of what their zip code might have been, to realize that someone who didn't have indoor plumbing or electricity for most of their youth could become a Naval Academy appointee and also be on a nuclear sub, nuclear physicist, and work in nuclear physics. And that was only the first part of his life before he became president. And that was only another part of his life before he was an incredibly charitable individual. So I would certainly, I would certainly add on to what Zach has already pointed out about President Carter. If anybody else saw those billboards, it said character, and it had C-A-R-T-E-R highlighted in the word character, and I had a picture of Jimmy Carter. And I kind of pulled over so my sons could see it last week, because it was just a very good presentation. Whatever ad guy came up with that, or ad gal, did a very good job, but it also just really summed it up well. So I thank you, Zach, for mentioning that. The last couple of times that we've had our first meeting of the year, I'm always, in my mind, brought back to when I first became a member of council, and I attended a New Year's Eve Mass at St. Helens, and they read the Prayer for Public Servants by Archbishop John Carroll, which happens to be a high school in town named after him also, which I frequent. But I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but the thing that stands out to me the most about the particular prayer is that what John Carroll asked of from the public servants and the people that give their lives to that, it's not necessarily power, it's not necessarily the ability to do whatever they want or always be right, but it's the ability to be wise, and it's the ability to discharge their duties honestly and with ability, and it's the ability to bring happiness and promote peace, and most importantly, perpetuate the blessing of equal liberty. And, this was written 250 years ago, so it's something that I lean on, and I read it once a year, and I always think I should read this more than once a year, but it's something that I think about a lot, and I'm reminded of that, and it's a prayer that I pray for all 7 of us. I would then say that obviously we thank the public servants in our community that were putting in the time that they did, and I also want to thank so many neighbors that I just witnessed, and I'm sure all of us did, the last few days that were helping their people next door, a few doors down, and that's been really nice to see as someone who has lived in the community for a long time, and we know what kind of people this community is made up of, but it's always nice to be reminded of that. So I want to thank the thousands of people that were taking time to help their neighbor after they already work on their own driveway or walkway, and they're going down the street to help out other folks. So thank you to our residents, and hopefully we don't have to do too much work this weekend, but I know we'll meet the moment. On to Mr. Maxfield.
Well said, everyone, but I just want to take time to thank the Public Works Department, the maintenance staff, as well as Police and Fire for all the hard work they put in, as well as Josh and all the employees here, as well as thank you for the future incoming days as well. Everyone in Riverside, be safe. And also, please listen to what the city manager said about parking your cars and keeping them off the streets. It does make things a lot more difficult. And we do have some new plow drivers, so it'd be remiss for you to keep them off the streets. No, they did an excellent job, and they're going to continue to do an excellent job. So, but it really does make things a lot easier if you do keep your cars off the streets. So thank you.
Deputy Mayor Fry.
Thank you all for your confidence in me. I hope to serve you all well in the deputy mayor position this year. On the topic of President Carter, one thing that people may not know about me is I probably would not be sitting in this seat if it weren't for him. I was kind of aimless after high school, and I didn't exactly know what I was going to do next in my life. And I got involved with the St. Mary Development Corporation and got involved in housing. And when I finally went to college, I became deeply involved in Habitat for Humanity, which is a tremendous organization. And he gave such a wonderful face for that organization, especially as I went to an all-girls school. And so the idea of an all-female crew working on building a house on our spring breaks, it was just a phenomenal leadership development opportunity. And I thank President Carter for giving us that as an avenue to service and presenting service as something worthy for people to achieve. So yeah, my path to this position was through Habitat. I also want to take a moment. I know we do strive to keep our meetings timely and efficient, but I really appreciated the deliberation tonight. This is my favorite type of meeting, and I appreciate everyone who, put their thoughts forward, hashed out the problems. That's when we work together, I think that's when we get the best outcomes. So I thank you all for your efforts tonight. That is it from me.
And Mr. Denny.
Well, first of all, I want to say congratulations, Brenda. It's a long time coming, but we've had these discussions many times of whether or not you wanted to do it or
Yeah,
not, but
yeah.
congratulations.
Thank you.
Most of you were not working in 1977 to 1981 when Jimmy Carter was president. I was. I remember he came into a presidency with a country in a mess. We had just gone through the wage and price freezes of Nixon and Ford, and and then he was handed the Iran situation, and I think more than anything, that is the reason he didn't get his second term. But he didn't let that stop him. He went out and he just worked like crazy for Habitat for Humanity. And that is something that people in our community and all communities need to see. Just because you didn't get what you wanted doesn't mean you can't do something else. And we all need to work together for the betterment of all of us. So instead of complaining about things we don't have or things the city doesn't do or that you can't get done, go out and help your neighbor clean their driveway, clean off their sidewalk, so that folks aren't walking in the street. Don't just say something, do something. And I think that would go a long way to make our community, and then our city, a better place to live, work, and play. And with that, I think I'm done.
Okay.
This is National Law Enforcement Day, and we failed to recognize that today. It is the National...
National Law Enforcement Appreciation Day.
Thank you. But I'm on the County Affordable Housing Committee. I think I found my new person to recommend to the commissioners that they replace me.
Well, I thank you, Sarah, for mentioning National Law Enforcement Appreciation Day. And I think anybody watching throughout this evening's meeting has heard many of us talk about how much we appreciate what our public servants do, and public safety is always at the front of our mind. And I know, I'm sure many of us saw the same thing. In addition to our road crews out there, I saw our police officers out there mostly helping. They weren't just driving around. They were out figuring out ways they could help folks. Maybe it's a bad thing. I mean, we just come to expect that in Riverside. That's what our guys do. That's what our guys and gals do. So certainly appreciate them today and every day. And with that, we will adjourn the meeting at 7:54 PM. Thank you, folks.